This is red oak. Oddly enough, same thing in Vermont. We don't get a lot of white oak up here in Vermont. For some reason, preferentially red oak tends to grow. And red oak, I mean, I used to love it as a kid. Apparently in the woodworking community, people have turned their back on red oak and they hate it because it's an open grain wood, it's an open pore wood. So it tends to have a very dramatic color profile once you stain it, especially if you do a single primary stain, sand back, and then do a secondary stain on it. It has a very dramatic kind of punch you in the face color profile, which I think people, it's a very, very specific thing. You have to want that in your interior space. Red oak doesn't do well outside. It's not moisture and rot resistant like white oak is. Whenever you hear about whiskey barrels and wine barrels, that's exclusively white oak, because red oak is not moisture resistant, but white oak is. That's why they used to build ships and galleons and man of war out of them. All right,
maple.
Yeah, so we get a ton of rock maple up here. Sugar maple, it's the same thing. And they grow absolutely huge up here. We've cut rock maples up here over 50 inches in diameter. The problem is that the National Hardwood Lumber Association and a bunch of people who rate the workability of woods, maple in large part is very unstable as a wood, okay? And that's exactly what we found. When you do slab tops for tables, when you do slab tops for benches, stuff like that, the wood that the domestic hardwood that we cut, out of all of them, maple is most likely to cut and twist. Okay, so not all maple does. We've cut probably hundreds of tabletops at this point, and there's a certain percentage that no matter what you do, that tabletop will want to cut and twist. And maple is notorious for it. It's a beautiful wood, especially when it's clear like this. It's just incredible, and it's ridiculously hard. A lot of people are used to having soft maple in other parts of the United States. And the rock maple up here that's a good name for it, because it's very, very hard cutting wood. Same thing with birch. Birch cuts basically like concrete up here. I'll talk more about that why a little bit later. This is hemlock over here. There's only really 2 species that people ask us to cut for timber hardwood packages, and that's almost exclusively pine and hemlock. Because of federal logging contracts and a lot of other legal aspects of the logging trade, sometimes we'll have access to a ton of hemlock and sometimes we'll have access to a ton of pine. So when builders and timber framers contact us, a lot of them are amenable to both, because sometimes the client will want to stain the timber frame dark, or the client just really doesn't care what it's made out of. So some of the people are very specific. I would say 20% of the timber framers just say it has to be hemlock on this one, and then 80% are kind of just like, just cut it from a single species, so we don't have a mix and match between the two. So when we go to finish the timber frame, it looks relatively homogeneous. So we're amenable to work with that. So if we have a lot of eastern white pine in the yard, we'll cut it out of pine. If we have a lot of hemlock in the yard, we'll cut the package out of hemlock. This is black locust. It's another one of the woods that we really don't get much of, but when people get into locust, usually they'll give us a call and say, hey, would you like to buy a quarter truckload of locust, because it's usually it's usually either a single tree or 2 or 3 trees. We never get like a copse of locust up here. It doesn't happen where you find 300 locust trees all clustered together. That's just not how the species grow up here. So locust is extremely, extremely hard. It's probably, I would say, Dave might agree, I'd say this might be our hardest cutting hardwood up here. It seems to just absolutely smash the blades when we try to cut it. So a lot of locust is for sale cheap online. Typically that's smaller boards. Once you start climbing into larger boards, the price on locust it goes off the rails, because no one has access. Most people, I should say, don't have access to larger diameter trees. And then for stability and kiln drying loss reasons, everyone cuts those down into either either 6-inch or 4-inch boards, because they don't want to lose wider boards to splitting, because then you basically throwing the boards in the trash. The wider you cut a board when you're kiln drying or processing the board air drying, the more likely the board is to split. So when you're in the commodity hardwood lumber grade selling business, even though per square foot you're getting much more, the wider the board is when you go to retail it, there's a much higher loss in the process. So when a homeowner sees a 6-inch board and it's $6 a square foot, and they see a 10-inch board and it's $12 a square foot, and they think, well, you know, it's kind of outrageous, and you know, this and that and the other, because it is per square foot still. But what they don't understand is you might lose 50% of that hardwood on the wider boards through kiln drying, straight line ripping, and reprocessing through a molder. So you're not actually making a significant amount more per square foot on a wider board. All right, I don't know if I'm gonna keep that in, but that was my divergent anarchic rampage for kiln drying and stuff. All right, so we're gonna go to the next cabinet. All right, so we had to switch the battery again. Let me apologize for me sounding weird or being a little bit off. One, I'm not a normal human, as Dave reminds me all the time, and two, I'm definitely coming down with the flu, maybe COVID, for like the 3rd or 4th time now. All right, so the next species of wood we have is black walnut, which obviously anyone who has been watching woodworking videos on YouTube the last 5 years knows about. Pretty much everybody who's doing high-end furniture, all they're using is black walnut. I have mixed opinions on it. It's a beautiful wood. It's very cool looking wood. Depending on if it's kiln dried or air dried, it has purple undertones to it a lot of times. We have very little access to walnut in Vermont. It's a very rare species up here. Occasionally we do have some huge walnuts. But the problem is with that is that when you have one tree in 20,000 that's walnut, or maybe less, when it's time for the tree to come down, usually the homeowner thinks that they're sitting on some sort of second mortgage for their house. So they'll have a large walnut and they'll basically say, not only want the walnut removed for free, they'll want something absolutely outrageous for it, like, I'd like $10,000 for my tree. Well, that's not how lumber and timber works. Lumber and timber is a commodity market, so tree cutting is expensive because of a lot of the insurances that tree cutting companies have to carry, and just the general liability and the danger of workers being hurt. So just the fact that the tree is being removed for free is a lot of money in itself. And then a lot of homeowners want the tree removed, plus they want money for the tree. And some people, I guess, might do that, but there's just absolutely no profit margin to do that. So we always tell people, not a chance. You know, once the tree service has it down and on the ground and slashed to whatever length that the homeowner would like the grade lumber cut to, then we'll come out, we'll check the logs to see if they're good, and then we'll give them a quote to reprocess the log. But trying to buy a standing tree, you can tell from one of our past videos, that's an absolute no-go. It's okay, a lot of people commented on that video, by the way, it's okay to buy a standing or a timber stand. So you're buying, you know, 6 or 10 or 100 acres of standing timber, because you can amortize the loss of bad trees over the 10,000 trees that you're cutting and reprocessing. Dave's phone is going off. Sounds like a disco party. So when you buy a large stand of timber, I said the title of that video, I think, is why sawmills should never buy standing trees. I meant a single standing tree or 2 or 3 standing trees that a tree service are taking down. I didn't mean standing timber, because that's how timber companies buy tracts of land to log them out and get their raw material to so when a logging company or a timber company buys a huge tract of land and they have bad trees on that, let's say 4% of the trees are rotten on that land or have nasty, nasty wind shake on them. They can amortize that loss over the 10,000 trees that they're buying. So they don't care if there's 200 trees that are lost in that, okay? When you go and buy 3 trees from a tree service and 1 or 2 or all 3 are rotten, then you paid a lot of money to that homeowner or the tree service to have rights to those trees, okay? So it's not worth it. You have to wait until the trees are on the ground and they're slashed to length so that you can look down the ends of the finished log lengths and see kind of if there's, for pine, if there's red rot, or if there's spalt, like really nasty punky spalting in some of the rock maple up here, or any other species specific problem. All right, so walnut, like I said, we just don't have a lot of access to it. It is a beautiful wood. A lot of people are after it, but down south through the mid-Atlantic regions, and especially down south, like Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, there's a lot of black walnut. So this is poplar. Poplar we occasionally get, but again, it's a tree situation up here. We'll have an odd poplar log. Poplar is actually a really, really nice wood. It's very clean, it's relatively stable. Usually it's a commodity wood that people use for trim and basically like filler pieces in between kitchen cabinets and stuff like that. So it's not typically what people make furniture out of, but it is a nice wood and it's clear. And usually poplar is extremely, extremely not free, which is really, really nice to deal with when you're cutting. And then go to poly, that looks horrible on camera. All right, sorry about that. Let me not pick the sawdust out of my eye on camera. 1 minute. When Dave's phone keeps blowing up, Dave, leave. Just go, bro. I can't read it. Just leave. You're not doing anything anyway. Story of his life, people. Story of his life.